I got a big gripe, and that gripe is with research and nutrition. And my biggest gripe is people that try to go in and discredit things that don't have, some solid study backing it. Well, what do you think we got all the really bad nutrition information the past 40 years in this country? Where do you think we got it from? We got it from research. Very poorly interpreted, very poorly run research. I think it's 7-country study, which is really supposed to be like 14 countries or 12, but he just dropped the ones that didn't support his hypothesis. That was Ansel Keys. He was a big bully, and he basically bullied his critics and opponents, and that's how we had the whole anti-fat dogma, which paved the way for the whole sugar revolution, the processed food revolution, and he's literally single-handedly responsible for the death of millions upon millions. The number one killer today is heart disease. Cancer's falling right behind. Don't talk to me about nutrition research, because here's the thing. Unless you lock humans in the cage like you can do with rats, you cannot prove causation. But, and here's a corollary to that, we have thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands at this point, of success stories of people that are following principles of paleo, primal, ancestral health, real food principles, even like sprinkle some low carb and keto in, but really fundamentally with a base that's based on our ancestral health, based on what our ancestors would have eaten, which was real food, close to nature as possible, moving as much as possible, and as much away from the processed, refined, artificial crap that is a result of our industrialized food supply. And guess what? People are getting crazy results. Do I need to have some guy in a lab coat that may or may not be funded by some big food company or whatever to tell me that the truth is in there somewhere? No. Most nutrition you can figure out with some common sense. Understand biology, hormones, insulin, glucagon, fructose, how it goes in the liver, blood sugar, all these things, right? Understand some of that basic stuff we already know. Take some of our ancestral past, how hunter-gatherers have lived in the wild for hundreds of thousands of years, and then primate evolution even before then, and use your brain and figure out what you should be doing. Then do some very simple testing in your own life, and you literally have all the science you're ever going to need. In fact, the biggest thing missing from all the nutrition recommendations nowadays is common freaking sense. I was on examine.com last night. It's supposed to be this trusted resource. They still talk about like weight loss is calories in, calories out. They even have a thing about how saying artificial sweeteners and aspartame, things like that, and diet sodas aren't that bad for you, other than they may contribute to you overeating because of this sense of sweet. Like, it's like, are you freaking kidding me? And the problem with that entire website and the entire idea that we're going to take the research and look at it or whatever is you can't 100% control for nutrition-based research in humans. You can't, because nobody is legally allowed to lock humans up and feed them the exact amount of foods for a period of time long enough to show actual physical changes and then test the human, and like hook it up to a computer. Like it just can't be done. What these proponents of that type of research, science-based method towards nutrition is they take all the current available research, which is very lacking, it's very biased, a lot of it is poorly done, a lot of it's even funded by big pharma, big government, big food, and then they say, well, research doesn't support that, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, what about in 50 years? Let's say we have a breakthrough in how research is done in nutrition. Or even we just have more observational studies and more studies that can kind of like lead us in the right direction, because that's a lot of what research does. It can kind of point you in the right directions. But lack of research, like lack of understanding, does not mean that the recommendation or the thing is wrong or not actually proving causation. And that's the biggest issue with research is people say, oh, well, research doesn't support that. It's like, well, maybe we haven't done the research yet. Maybe the research that has been done has been poorly done, poorly interpreted. And that's what people don't understand. People think of research and science as things like this fixed constant that we can just reference. Well, what were people saying in the 1920s and 1930s, then the 1940s and 50s and 60s? Like, were they citing research that was done, 20, 30 years before? In fact, most of what we cite today is probably recent research that's ideally done better and better and better as scientists get better and methods get better and tracking gets better and interpretation gets better, peer review gets better, and all these things get better. But it still is only a maybe. Research is a maybe. And too much of the stuff, like what I see at examine.com, and one of the leading researchers for them, they take the current research and they make these matter-of-fact extrapolations. And that is factually, scientifically, irrevocably freaking correct. Use your brain, test on yourself, and like you have all the data you need. You don't need some guy in a lab coat to say this does that, whatever. Like you can literally take your blood work today and then eat a certain way, and every 3 days you could do this. You could do a new test and eat a certain way and take your blood work again and literally see scientifically the changes. You could even do that by changing one thing, like red meat, for example. Eat conventional meat, red meat, for 30 days. Then eat grass-fed, organic, local meat for 30 days. Eat the same amount every day. Maybe do like half a pound a day or whatever. And then don't change anything else in your diet. And then track before and afters, also have a food journal of how you feel, etc. And like, you'll have a lot of data. And even then, it won't be 100% causation based, because you'll be drinking different things, you'll have different sleep, there'll be different environmental factors, maybe your allergies acting up. There's so many variables to human health, which is why we have so much misinformation around it. But really, if we get down to the first principles of human health and biology, we look at the hormonal system, we look at how insulin works, we look about how carbs, proteins, and fats interact in the body, the hormonal response of them, and just if we can really use some common sense with these things we already know, you can pretty much figure out what optimal nutrition is. It's real freaking food, period. My name is Colin, I approve this message. I don't approve all the BS, fear-mongering, dogma that you hear from big food, big pharma, really damaging our culture, because they're using this facade of science, this idea that because they looked at some studies, like their word is gold or whatever, like I can't stand it. It's garbage, it's complete and utter garbage. That's all I gotta say today about that. Eat real food cooked at home, and then just watch what happens. Oh, and that means nothing artificial. Get rid of diet sodas and artificial sweeteners and all that crap. Eliminate sugar. Stop eating processed and refined grains and foods out of a box. Basically, get rid of all big food from any big food company and just eat small, real, local, organic, as close to nature as possible. And, you'll have everything you need to know. Every single marker of health will improve.